Rounding out the live Guns N' Roses experience these days are backup singers, an all-female horn section, and utility player and singer Teddy Andreas, who previously worked with singer-songwriter Karl M.
We got a guy named Teddy Andreas, and he does harmonica, which is on songs like Bad Obsession, and he plays organ. He's a great organ player, and he's just a great background vocalist.
And it's fun having this whole, entourage out in the road. Like 5 girls and Ted, and the rest of us, it's a circus.
A circus indeed.
Now, in Slash's book, he talked about hitting the road after the records were done. He said the touring was effing exciting. It was what kept us through the increasingly frequent rough spots. After we got our stage show together, the backup singers, the horn section, and all, we did a week's worth of rehearsals with every element intact, and suddenly we found ourselves in South America before a crowd of 180,000 at Rock in Rio. Now, what's funny is he seems to have his dates mixed up because they never had any of these backup singers until late 91 when Gilby joined the band. So Slash went on to say, from there we set off on the main event, touring arenas with massive production and stage. That whole tour was stadium after stadium. We had Dizzy Reed, Teddy Zigzag, the horn section, and the girl singers. It was such a crazy setup compared to what we've been used to. First of all, there was no set list. We never did the same set on any night. We had our standards like November Rain, You Could Be Mine, Paradise City, and Welcome to the Jungle, but the rest was up for grabs. The girls, the backup singers, and horn players had to be on stage the entire time, which posed problems that we hadn't thought of, like what if they had to pee? I'd made Ted Zigzag the pit boss of the little support band. He'd actually recruited them, and it was funny to watch him deal with them. The girls would argue over their outfits, who got to wear what, and we'd never experienced crazy shit like this before on one of our tours. When one of the girls was having their periods, which somehow seemed to be synchronized, I found it was just best to stay out of their way altogether. So in Axel's 1992 Rolling Stone interview, that was probably one of his better-known interviews he gave, he was asked about the band's expanding sound and having more musicians on tour with them. So Rolling Stone asked, I've talked to people who liked the band better when it was stripped down. You've added the horn section and the backup singers and a second keyboard player. The shows are becoming a lot more professional and polished, to which Axel said, but I don't think it's losing any of its energy. There's a lot more energy now, and I think that before people were seeing the potential. To which the Rolling Stone reporter said, there are purists who prefer the raw vibe of bands like the Sex Pistols and the sound that they had and that Guns N' Roses had in its early days. To which Axel responded, yeah, well, there are people who like a girl that had the same haircut she had 10 years ago too. I understand that, and I understand that a lot. But it's like we're evolving and it's us. I read a quote where David Bowie was saying that Pink Floyd was Syd Barrett to him. And I'm like, yeah, but to deny anything that Pink Floyd done after that, certain elements of our music and our performance and our attitude are still there, but we're not the same people we were then. Maybe it would have been best for the purists if we died or broken up. Then we get to keep it the way that they liked it.
You've been on the road for about a year now. In what way is the show different than it was a year ago when you started out?
Well, Izzy's not in the band anymore. That's a start. And we brought in some horn players and stuff to fill out certain songs that we recorded like that. So that we had that change. That's about it. The rest of it's just as chaotic as it always has been.
Who came up with the idea to make it a bigger band than it used to be?
Well, when this first started coming up, it was around the time that Izzy split and Gilby came in, and at the same time I was trying to audition new musicians to make November Rain and Heaven's Door and stuff sound a little bit more like it did on the record. And Axel really wanted to get into that, so I got the job of going out and finding something to simulate it. And I didn't want anything corny like 3 guys in tuxedos coming up with their horns, right? So I got some chicks to do it, and that's how basically the whole thing came about.
And you like the way it's going now?
Oh, it's been awesome, yeah.
So some of the touring members of Guns N' Roses back in the Use Your Illusion days have given interviews about what it was like to tour with them. So Roberta Freeman gave an interview to Brando from Appetite for Distortion, and she talked about her career, but she also talked about how she ended up hooking up with Guns N' Roses. So she was originally on tour with Cinderella, And when drummer from Cinderella, Fred Curry, told her about the fact that Guns N' Roses was looking for a backup singer, she decided to throw her hat in the ring. So Fred Curry was friends with Slash and played with Guns N' Roses, and Fred ended up mentioning her name to Slash. So originally Roberta's impression of Guns N' Roses was that she'd heard of them a lot on TV and over the radio. Welcome to the Jungle was playing on everything, she remembered, but she compared Guns N' Roses to Zeppelin because of Axl's falsetto, but she originally admitted she wasn't a big fan of the band. When she first joined, she liked their music, but she liked Pink Floyd much better. But she thought it was a great opportunity to work with Guns N' Roses given their popularity, and Slash basically called Roberta and invited her to do the gig. So she said that Axel never showed up to any rehearsals, and she started to worry. And once they got to the first show, Roberta hadn't seen or even met Axel at that point. So she had to go through their manager, Doug Goldstein, and ask to talk to Axel. She didn't know how guarded the whole camp was, and the camp didn't like people talking to Axel. So Roberta was pretty persistent that she talked to Axel, and Goldstein finally gave her the okay. And she said Axel was really cool and okay with everything. She said he was very kind and very complimentary, and Axel felt that the backup singers added so much to the sound, and she said that Axel never said an unkind word to her. She did say that, however, there were some people in the band who weren't happy to see the backup singers since they were cramping their style, and it was really Axel who wanted the backup singers. She also said that some of the men in the audience would hold derogatory signs towards them whenever they'd be on stage with the band. So how did Teddy get hired by Guns N' Roses, and what were some of the cool stories he had to share about, playing with the band for the first time and dealing with their whole entourage and their whole setup and dealing with Axel? So we interviewed Teddy late last year, I want to say, or it was maybe in late 2017, and he told us some great stories for about 2 hours. So here's some stories he shared with us about how he got hired by the band, some of the cool moments that happened on tour, and kind of dealing with Axel on the tour as well.
Yeah, he was. We were doing this live. I had Slash came down to see us because it came from the Mayhew brothers. I don't know if you guys know the history of Guns, but the Mayhew brothers are the quintessential roadie guys that have been with Guns since the beginning. Well, Mike Mayhew was working for Carol at the time, and he goes, "Hey man, there's this band. I think they might be needing some keyboards, the singer's adding some stuff on the new record is all," and this was the Use Your Illusion stuff. And he goes, "Would you like to come down and play, blah, blah, blah." And so from that, meeting of the roadie guys, I got the Guns gig. They said, "Listen, Axel we're making this November Rain video, and we're going to need somebody to play piano, blah, blah, blah." They couldn't find Dizzy. It was the weirdest thing, man. Dizzy had gone out to get married at Venice Beach. And so they said, and I was on my way to a gig, and they said, "Could you stop by, the Record Plant?" I think it was Record Plant or A&M. I think it was Record Plant, and play the piano, because the piano, they detuned half step, but the piano is in standard tuning. So they asked if I would come in and play it in the half step down, because Axel couldn't play it half step down. They normally would just tune the piano down. So I get there and I go, "Well, where's Diz?" He goes, "Well, we don't know where he is, Bob." Finally he shows up. So I go to my gig, and then that's where Slash and Duff came to see us play. I was playing with a guy named B.B. Chung King, who was like the Asian Stevie Ray Vaughan, monster guitar player, who was now since passed on. And we were playing at the Roxy. And I remember them standing behind the stage just watching. And they said, "Okay, yeah, let's use Ted. Let's use this guy." Well, what they didn't know was Axel had gone ahead and already hired Dizzy. So now they went from no keyboard players to having 2 keyboard players.
Right.
So that's pretty much it. And then me and Slash just he'd always come down to our clubs, our little bars and stuff, and sat in. It was one of the great things about Slash, and why he's so good, is that he's a sponge. He watches, he listens, and he learns from everybody. And he learned a lot from playing with guys like myself and my guys like that were in my band, who've been around the block a couple times. We had a lot of fun on that tour, man. That Use Your Illusion tour. It was pretty great thing. I'll tell you a funny story. First gig was Madison Square Garden, and now this is the start of the Use Your Illusion tour. So the production crew goes from having they were 5 pieces at the time, something like that.
Yeah, 5, 6.
To having a second keyboard player, 3 horn players, and 2 girl singers. So the production crew had to worry about like 6 more people, and literally they forgot to tell us on the first gig that they were going to pick us up from the hotel. They never picked us up. We actually walked into the front door through the front door with our laminates. And I went straight to the office, and this is how ruthless these guys were. They were great. They're business guys. Hey man, you motherfucker, you forgot to pick us up. He goes, listen, we don't have time for dealing with extra musicians in this band.
Oh, that's terrible.
Oh, it was so demeaning. It's like we walked literally through the front door of Madison Square Garden for our gig.
Wow.
So
the girls.
So did you guys get like throughout that whole tour? Did management treat you better after that, or were you guys, like you guys were treated?
Well, you know what it was? It was a transition. They didn't know how to deal with outside players. They knew the Guns N' Roses guys. They knew that band. That's the band that they were managing. They didn't know about it. Extra players. What do we do with 2 girl singers? And we're now we're gonna have to get extra hotel rooms. Where do they change backstage? Where do they? Do we have to make them another dressing room?
Right.
Stuff like that.
Now,
they were a rock and roll band, man. It's right. They were a rock and roll band. They didn't know nothing about that. With the Guns thing, man, you learn really quickly that not to ask questions and just go with the flow. He was in his own thing. He did his own thing. When he was ready to sing and get on stage, he would get ready to sing. And as a kind of a seasoned player, I going, the fuck's his problem, man?
Right.
Come on, just get up on stage and sing. And then Slash would always say, Ted, go have a beer and relax. Just take a nap or something. We'll call you when we're ready.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So, but that as you can tell, came back to bite them in the ass. And then now they know what to do. You get up on stage. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was very frustrating for us sometimes. He if he had a fight or something with his girlfriend, or if somebody said something he didn't like, or I'll tell you, he came to the Japanese to the Tokyo Dome once when they had to build the stage out, and they didn't tell him
that were recorded.
Yeah, they didn't tell him that the stage was going to be smaller because of the fire codes, and he just happened to show up because he would never show up for the sound check or the rehearsals. We just had to, learn the songs without him, and he showed up at the gig, and because no one told him that the stage was going to be smaller, he just took off because that's not going to do, and he walked off, and I was like, wow, okay. Wow, dude. Okay, it's not that big a deal, It's like, but he was a perfectionist, and when he would rant and rave, he had a good reason for it. I mean, after a while, you go, you know what? The guy's right. The guy is right. And when he was on, no one could touch Axel Rose. I mean, no one can sprint. Do you try to sprint and sing at full volume and see how far you get?
Right.
The guy was in amazing shape, man. Amazing shape. He worked out on this machine after the gig. After a 2.5-hour gig, he would work out on this thing called a ROM machine. It was about the size of a small apartment, this thing, and they had a case for it. And you worked out on it for like 8 minutes, and it did a full body workout in 8 minutes. And the security guys couldn't even do it. He would jump on his machine, man, and just go down. Incredibly in shape guy. He ate well, didn't drink. He smoked those ridiculous looking cigarettes.
Filters with the filters, right?
Yeah, with the big long. But I mean, no one could touch him when he was on, man. No one could sing. No one can sing like that guy now.
Nope.
For God's sakes.
Did you ever see management like Doug Goldstein ever try to like get him on stage earlier, or was it just like whenever he's ready, he's ready?
That's kind of that's what they had to do. Yeah.
So when was the first time you met Axel? Was it like when you joined the band to go on or go to the studio? I guess.
Yeah, we were rehearsing for a couple days with the girls and myself and Gilby. I joined when Gilby joined.
Right.
And so we were rehearsing it at Third Encore, was it? And he didn't come. I go, well, how do you guys rehearse these songs without the vocal? How do you? Because again, I'm old school. I go, how do you know where everything is? Well, we just know these songs so well. We don't need the lead vocal. Like, wow. So I had to kind of I had to change my way of thinking. And then finally he did show up, and he was very nice, very cordial. He was always really nice to me. And I don't know, maybe because I played piano too or something, but he was always really nice, and he liked what I did, I guess.
So did you guys ever like hang out a lot on tour, or was it just mostly you / Matt and Dustin?
Yeah,
hung out a lot?
it was the three of us. Axel pretty much had his own thing that he did, which is unfortunate, because it was really unfortunate because, you couldn't go anywhere with him.
Yeah, so I can imagine.
We couldn't go out to eat, man. In South America, we had, it was like the president. We had decoy cars. There would be a van with curtains that would leave out the front of the hotel, and had 2 or 3 people in it, nobody in it, and then we would out the back. And once we went to a restaurant and the kids found out where we were, they would literally have to pull the van up onto the sidewalk so that the side door blocked the opening of the restaurant door, so it would go right into the van. It was, and they would run after the vans, man. It's a scary thing, being in a situation like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I want to ask
scary.
some more questions about South America. Like, didn't you guys also have like fake people who dress up as Slash and Axel to like distract people so that they could actually leave the hotel?
It's sometimes, very rarely, but yeah, they did. A lot of it was decoy cars. It's just a decoy van, and then a lot of police escorts. When there was a problem and the show was cut short, there was usually management at the end of the ramp in the back of the stage that would go right, just point out what vans you'd get into, and the vans would be policed right out of the venue.
Wow, that's scary. So yeah, I want to get to that. So I wanted to ask you, around that time, that's when the band was going to go play the States and they scaled down the tour.
Right.
So how did you guys find out that they were going to be scaling down?
Well, I found that out on the plane ride home.
Oh,
That's awful.
Yeah. On the plane ride home, they go, listen, we're not going to take out the horns of the extra players. John Reese was the one that came up to me and told me, and he goes, but they're gonna take you, Ted. They're gonna keep the second keyboard. I go, oh, okay, that's cool. By the time we landed, I was off. I was gone. Yeah. They go, Ted, they decided not to take the extra keyboard. Like, oh man.
So you were pretty bummed out, I guess. Like,
yeah. Well, I was, but you know what? I had been on the road for 2.5 years with these guys, so I was like, okay, I'll go home and go to sleep for a little bit.
Yeah, right.
So after the
that was funny. I was on the tour. I was on the Skin and Bones tour. By the time the plane landed, I was off it.
So did you just chill out after that for a bit? Because being on the road for that long, it's probably nice to get a break.
Yeah, you know what? Being a musician, though, you chill for about 3 or 4 days, and then you go, man, I got to play. I got to play. So I would start going around, to Hollywood, to the clubs and stuff.
Now, if you guys have read Slash's book, he expressed a much different sentiment once the band decided to strip things back and go on the road in early '93 and lose the horns players and the extra keyboardist. So he said that we returned to the States in early February and had a month off before we started the next leg, an American tour we called Skin and Bones. This John in particular was basically aimed at making us money because the production was stripped back to the bare essentials. We kept Dizzy Reed, but Teddy and the horn section were gone, as were the backup singers, and the tour featured an acoustic section in the middle and basically showcased the hits off of GNR Lies as well, in addition to a few cover songs such as Dead Flowers. I couldn't have been happier. Finally, we were touring as a bare bones rock and roll band again. This leg, in my mind, was our chance to show the world the Use Your Illusion records as I'd always heard them, and the day that I'd finished recording my last guitar part for those records, I left the studio with a mix of them that was simple and raw before any synths or horns or backup vocal tracks were layered on. I'd never forgotten how cool they sounded in that stripped down, simple, and powerful state. I wish that I still had a copy of them or that they were floating around somewhere on the internet. Believe me, they sounded so cool and they were entirely different beasts altogether from the versions that got released. I'm not going to get into hindsight about what could have been, but all in all, they were totally, wholly different bodies of work. In any case, we got a chance to basically do the song scaled back and straight up with the band reduced to its normal size. I was elated. So that does it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit the like button and subscribe. And what is your opinion on the scaled up version of Guns N' Roses? Some people felt that the band got too bloated.
Our Central, yeah!